You will excuse me if, first, I say that we will sign this contract with a heavy heart, with a few scratches of the pen. We will sell the best part of our reservation. Right now, the future does not look too good to us. These words were spoken by George Gillette, chairman of the Fort Berthold Tribal Council, on May 20th, 1948. In late 1943, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers released the PIC Plan. Its purpose was to reduce flooding on the Missouri River. This was to be accomplished by building a series of main stem dams in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana. The PIC Plan was merged with the Sloan Plan, and the combined plan was approved by Congress in 1944. Construction of the first and largest dam, the Garrison Dam, began in 1945 and was completed in late 1954. Work on a new bridge, which would span the reservoir created by the dam, began in 1951. The bridge at Elbow Woods was dismantled and the pieces were transported close to the location of the new bridge, then reassembled and incorporated as the center span of the new bridge. Work on the second Forebears Bridge west of Newtown was completed in 1955.
Later, just before the flood come, they built brick houses for us, and we had one for the boys and one for the girls, all great big brick buildings. And mind you, when that flood came, they just left all that. And then after the bridge come up, see, and then we all had to move up this way, so then that all Elbows, they just went to, the flood just went over it. And my stepmother called me while I was in Oregon, and she said, they put the bridge up here, over here, Newtown, she said. She said, we sure missed you, but it wasn't like the other time. She said, the crowd that we had and everything. She said, this time they had celebration, but it was just the people around Newtown there, you know, and Sanish. And the Sanish didn't move yet. They were still there, you know. And she said they went and they built a bridge over here, and so she said they had a bridge dedication. But you missed out, she said, you weren't here. It was, I guess, the way our home was, I guess, it was never the same, you know. It's all different after that. And then we come up here, and then it's all clay and hills and clay, everything, and the water was no good, too. Every place we built, it was not. And our place down there was running spring water, cold water just coming from the ground, you know. Most of them just moved here and there, and some moved out of the state and everything, you know, wherever they went. A lot of animals like coyotes, magpies. Now I never see a magpie or a crow up here, you know. I never see any unless they're all gone south or something. Magpies and crows and then meadowlarks, and everybody was, blackbirds were down there, you know. They'll just fly like that, the blackbirds, and they all get on one tree. Then they all started warbling, all kinds of tunes. That was our music.
When they moved the bridge up here next, and I remember it was about maybe 52, I think it was. And then they talked about moving, and I don't know, there was a lot of them against moving up this way, you know. And it was sad too, you know, because we didn't know what was in store for us coming up this way here. But I always remember my dad, he said when the government wants to do something, they're going to do that. He said, so he told my mother, you know, I'm going to start getting my everything ready, because I'm going to move up there. And my mother they had no other lands in White Shield, Nishu at that time. So my mother had land up here. So then she said, well, we'll probably have to move up there. And then, so he said he would move. He said, because I have to make a pasture, he said, and fence that. And then I'll bring up my livestock, because we had cattle and then horses. We had to take care of gardens, and we helped our folks. And then like with our mother, and then she dried corn, you know.
That's my birthday, the year of 1934. When we moved up to the high country, water come up pretty fast. I know quite a few families had left some stuff because they couldn't get to it. After we moved up, my folks said it's going to be a different life. They were right. Even the elders, when they talked, they said, if we moved out here and go where we're going to be relocated, things going to go different.
Before the lake, it was laid back and very, very quiet. And after the lake, it was, what can I say? Energetic, and everyone was enthusiastic and hurry, 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 hurry. But yet it was a good life, because it kind of shaped up the country a lot. And the three towns got along marvelously well. I mean, there was still animosity, but they made up their mind they were going together. It was coming together, and we were going to live here. Well, of course, we did have TV, but people weren't as addicted to it then as they are now. People were always welcome at our house, whether it was for coffee or for a meal, and we were the same to other people.
Yeah, because we had to move to a new town and plant trees and get foundation built, and it was rainy and muddy, and we had to start all over new. And I even helped gravel the first gravel that went on the main street in Newtown. I got a truck from what is it? What's the guy down south there? That farmer, that big farmer, Elgin Peterson. He loaned us a truck, and Obels put in the gas, and I drove it to the haul for 2 weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, for 2 weekends, graveling the street. So otherwise we never even had gravel on Main Street. It was just...
And it was amazing the changes that had occurred already, because this plot was already out in the wheat field, and each lot was figured out, and the town site had been chosen, and people were going and buying their lots. And Van Hook was also moving in there, and Elbow Woods was moving in there, so it was like a triple city coming together in one. And the school was being built already, and the kids were having school in the church basement, and in the church and in the clinic basement, because there wasn't room in the school for everybody, because it was a big bunch of kids. It was both a sad and a good time, because we left our bearings from previous years. But we also moved to a nicer place, and everybody came together, and things were developing more. And in Saanich, not everyone had running water. So this was a new thing, to move to a town where we all had those kind of facilities.
Water and sewer.
Yeah, water and sewer and lights and all that. Because Saanich was kind of a camping town, so it was just an old-time cow town is really what it was. It had the stockyard, and people drove their cattle into market, even from 20-30 miles. And so when we moved, and they built a new stockyard, and then by that time people were beginning to truck their animals in. Okay. So it was much different that way. It was good for the women, because we had clubs and things like Steady Club and things that we could come together and visit and talk and stuff. And the men were so terribly busy that they didn't hardly have time for anything except work.
And when we first come back, I was married. We had a little baby, and so I was looking for a job right away, and got hired right away, and I went to work there. We was chipping cement. They would pour cement down. They put piling around, and then they would pump out all the water, and then they'd pour cement down, and we would chip it and sweep it and get it clean for the next foundation to go on. It's kind of the same as the foundation on the bottom of the river. No, it was cool because we were down below the water, you know, so it was cool. And I worked there at nights, and had those air hammers and sweeping and trying to get everything clean. So the next pour come, everything was clean to hook onto it and keep on. And then when they started, then they poured right on, night and day, right till they got to the top. There are some, you know, that stepped off the scaffold and fell down to the bottom, and then with that coffer dam, one night we had a seepage come in. There's water rushed in, and they sent a bucket down. We all jumped on that and got out of there. So it was, and when you're way down and below the water, it's kind of a little more risky than working up on top on the land. Yeah, it caved in, but not really, you know, just the whole wall caved in. It was just, it started to come, and then the water all rushed in, so we had time to drop a bucket and hang on to it and get out. I think there was about 6 of us, I think, if I remember right, down in the work down there with air hammers, and we had to hook on the air hammers and get them out too. But then they fixed it again, and next couple of days we were back down there working again. I know I'd done other work on it too. I didn't just work, you know, down in the coffer dam, because when they're pouring, well, then we had to do other work too. But I just don't remember all of the work that we did. I know I'd done a lot of maintenance work out there, and otherwise I don't know, kind of just let it drift away, I guess. Never paid much more attention. But I can remember we were working down on the bottom of the river. That was kind of the more scary part of it. But it was fun to see it being built, and then be there for the dedication of it. And
I was, the bridge must have been torn down around 1952, or it's probably a time that you might have a date there. But I would suspect one of the last things that was torn down in Elba Woods before 1953, when I think everything was pretty much moving then. I was gone away into the Air Force then, and I, see, one of my memories, I don't have the memories of the move or anything. I remember leaving Elba Woods. The house was still there, our farm, our ranch, and leaving, and then coming back in 1955, and it was a lake, big lake, you know. Because I remember driving down at number 8, getting by Pem Halls there, and it was the first time I saw I had bought an old car when I got out of the Air Force, or a new car. Actually, it was a 51 Kaiser. And I remember driving up to the edge of the water and looking out and seeing where our place used to be about a half a mile away. And I tell people, they say, what did you feel? And I said, well, I didn't really feel anything. I think it was just so big that I didn't feel sadness, but I just felt, darn, it's different, you know. That's kind of the feeling I had. And we sometimes talk about it. Of course, at that time, things were changing. We talked about the people that lived down along the river there, Floyd Montclair, everybody that lived in the valley. That would have been my dad's age. I suspect it had a different kind of impact on them. But I think I'm glad I wasn't there during the move. Because I think it would have been bad. I am just glad I just stayed away from them.
We really thought of going to Tioga at one time. Oil had just been discovered in Tioga, and it was a booming town. And I don't know how we eventually arrived at Newtown, except for the fact that the agency was moving there. And that's an interesting story of where they chose for the agency to go. The people in the agency wanted to go into Partial, but the Partial people weren't very receptive. And this Newtown group was trying to draw in as much population as possible, and so they were interested in having the agency come there. Well, yes, the bridge was taken down. I mean, it was closed. And then I more or less moved to Newtown before the rest of the bridge was brought up to Newtown. They were a long time in dismantling the bridge and then bringing it to Newtown. They, of course, had to stack each piece of iron and mark it so they could put it back together the same way. And this was right after the war when steel was kind of hard to get. So if it hadn't been right after the war, I'm sure they would have used new steel. But steel being in hard supply, they had big trucks that moved these big girders, every single piece. I haven't quite gotten my dates there, but I don't think it took too long. I think it was in October of '53, was it, when they dedicated the bridge. And I well remember the day because I was one of the 4 people who were the first to cross officially after Governor Brunsdale cut the ribbon. I was carrying the U.S. flag, I believe. Of course, the Saanich Bridge was there. I don't think there was any time we didn't have access across the river. I mean, so that's what happened. The buildings were being moved all the time. And of course, when the buildings move, sometimes you have to plan ahead and get under the wires. Now, I think in terms now of churches, there was the Elbowwoods Church, Congregational Church, and all life was centered around that church for many people, except for the people who went to the Catholic Church. But all the Protestants in Elbowwoods went to the Elbowwoods Church, which Harold and Eva Case were minister and his wife. They wanted very much to have that church, the people in the church, to have that building moved to Newtown, because the people associated church with their religion, more or less. But they found out that to do so, it was too expensive, and one of the reasons it was too expensive were the wires. I've always been told there were wires that would have to be cut and changed as they went through partial. So what happened, the church ended up on the prairie, and it was the same place where they relocated all the graves. And it grieves me very much, and a lot of people, that the church has not been kept up. It's still standing, sort of a shell right there in the cemetery. That whole area developed in Four Bears. I think one of the first things that were constructed was the museum. Before that, we had a group of campers from the east that the American Friends Service, the Quaker people, arranged. And they built 2 earth lodges across the river. So the earth lodges, I believe, were built before the museum. I mean, it was all opened up to us easily, yes. Oh, the bridge was a necessity, absolute necessity. Well, it's the only thing that holds together the whole reservation. That's possibly why Newtown was placed as the agency. My position has, in a way, changed. When I first came there, I was an employee of the government, and here this terrible thing was happening, actually, to the people. And as physician and working along with the agency people, our job was try to make the transition as easy as possible. So we would sort of try to play down the bad parts of this water coming, and try to lift up better parts to make people feel better. And of course the bad parts have been gone over and over and over, changing the culture and all that. There are all their special shrines being covered up, and which meant a lot to Indian people. And then moving the graves, and oh, what a mess all of this was, and people blame the deterioration of the moral values of the Indian people on this relocation. A lot of it increased drinking and increased separation of families and breaking up. So, as I say, I tried to emphasize the positive aspects of the water coming, and I believe the Corps of Engineers more or less had 5 different reasons for the water. Let's see if I can name them. Flood control, downstream of course, flood control. I didn't say too much about recreation, although that was one of their reasons. Control of the flow of the water so that they could have downriver navigation, which is one of the ones that we think is kind of crazy now. Irrigation, and maybe that's all the main reasons, or was there another one I missed? Well, my feelings changed in the fact that now I think that while living in Bismarck, we see that we think that the flow of the water isn't controlled very to our advantage. It seems to be controlled by the downriver barge traffic, which I don't know. We think of with nostalgia of the valley and the Indian people that lost all that, and also I don't know, but then there's people say that in another 100 years the thing will be all filled with silt. And they keep raising and lowering the level, and also their water supply isn't working out too well. And as for the irrigation, I don't think they've used the water for irrigation at all. The McCluskey Canal is just all full of weeds, Waterway Island. So a number of things didn't happen that the Indian people and the non-Indian, lots of non-Indian people lost their land too. My nurse all through the years was a farmer in just west of Newtown, and she and her husband lost a lot of land, and they're dealing with the Corps of Engineers was so complicated, red tape and all, that they haven't got a very good feeling toward the dam and the water coming and going. Well, I have a lifetime of memories, but I can remember going across a bridge. My ambulance driver, after we'd been out on a call, I would sleep on the stretcher on the way back, and always as we came across the bridge, I'd just wake up in time to look up and see the girders at the top of the bridge. That's quite friendly to know that I'd gotten back home at last.
I think what happened then is many people were already vacating the valley, getting out before the water started to rise. So as far as our family, it really didn't impact on us because we were moving on the north and east side of the river anyhow. But I would imagine it was a real problem for people like, say, the tribal officials who were trying to get the rest of the, say, for example, cemeteries moved, and some of the cemeteries were being moved here, and moving some of the buildings and some of the other houses. Like I say, the relocation process towards the end was very chaotic because the government had set a time to be completely out of the valley, and I think it was like October of 1954. And after that time, everything would revert to government ownership. So people were scrambling, to get out and get their stuff moved. The timing, I think the bridge could have been left there a lot longer. Well, the plan was that it would be put on a barge and then transported up the Missouri River to its present site. But I've also read where that was almost physically impossible. So it had to be dismantled beam by beam, steel post by steel post, and trucked overland to its site. and it was set on what used to be the Sanish rodeo grounds. Well, I think everybody, the entire reservation population was just completely devastated and, traumatized by, hey, there's a possibility that a dam will be built here. The early concern, they're talking about building a dam somewhere on the Missouri River. Well, the council was quick to take action that says, well, we oppose any dam that will threaten our livelihood. And it occurred over a number of years, at least 10 years. It wasn't like one day the government said, we're going to build a dam here, and they built the dam. So it was a long, long process, and just a lot of litigation, a lot of negotiation, a lot of work. So I think that the feeling was pretty gradual. First, yes, they're talking about building a dam, and then secondly, well, maybe the dam will be built somewhere close by. Well, maybe it'll be built, and eventually when it was decided that Riverdale would be the site chosen to build the dam, or the site selected, and then it became a very real threat to the livelihood. Then became real intense negotiations. And of course, in those years, the Indian, the tribal council had very little clout, in terms of in the halls of Congress. They had very little money. They eventually employed an attorney, but it was probably much too late. They were really up against the U.S. government and the state of North Dakota, both of which were pretty adamant that, yes, we're going to build this dam. It's hard to really put it all in just a short, brief statement, but there were other people. Some of the original people that were fighting against the dam passed away during that 10-year period. New leaders emerged, new ideas. The tribal council changed during that time. The government officials changed. So it was a whole period of a lot of chaos until eventually they reached the point where, like I say, there was sort of a real rush to vacate the valley by October of, I think it was 1954, and the water actually started to back up. I would suppose for my father, his realization came when he sold his land, because that's what the land was appraised. Indian people were told, you either sell your land or we will condemn it. Either way we will. But then when they said condemnation, the tribal council said, wait a minute, there's no statute in the U.S. Code that says you can condemn tribal land. There again, a glimmer of hope, maybe they can't condemn our land. Well, it went back through the halls of Congress, and they churned and churned, and if politicians and lawyers finally said, yes, there is a right of eminent domain. And so it was such a long legal process that it's hard to really say. Indian people finally realized that there was going to be a Garrison Dam. So when the Indian people were given the option to either selling at the government's appraised value or facing court through the condemnation process, and they were told, you may get even less. So that was, there's the dilemma. We would drive down during the summer months anyway, because that's when the water would rise, and almost every week you could see it was very gradual. It took several years for the water to really fill in to the 1830 elevation level. But I can remember driving down, and we would see, okay, now the water's up to the outskirts of Elbow Woods. Okay, now it's up to, Highway number 8. Now it's covering, so it was a very gradual. It reminds me a lot of that song, How High's the Water, Mama? 3 feet high and rising. It was sort of like that. It was rising. And eventually, you could go only as far as, say, Highway 8 to where it went down into the valley, and then you could see the water was completely up to that level. But I think it turned out it was a nice for the people of Fort Berthold to have that bridge moved, because then it's the same bridge except longer. And but I don't think that the government or the Corps of Engineers did it to, with the people of Fort Berthold in mind. I think it was purely economic. Hey, we can use all that steel. The bridge, after all, was only 20-some years old.
There was a whole bunch of people, men, working men in town. Must have been maybe 100, 150 working men in town, like carpenters and working on the streets and all that stuff. I just went out there right after I got here in the spring, and applied for a job. And they said, okay. They paid $1.32 an hour for the first summer, and then I got a job the next summer for $1.43 an hour. I was in the chips then, mostly down on the Coffer Dam, and mucking it out and everything, getting it ready for the scoop or the crane to go down there and dig it up. See, they couldn't get the mud out from underneath the beams that were holding the what do you call them? The steel walls, with beams across it to hold it up. And those beams, they couldn't get underneath there with a scoop. So we dug underneath the beams and dug it out and put it in the center there, so then they could lower that and get it out. But then we got a chance to get up out of there about every hour or two and have a cup of coffee or something, and back down again we went. All over the United States they came from, the bridge drew laborers from all over, and then people come to work too, because they worked here until fall, and they left and went down south, or I don't know what they did then. But they all weren't this way, but there's some of them. Some of the young guys, they spent all weekend at the local pub, But then Monday they were broke and they had to go back to work again, See.
The year when the bridge was going out, I was county commissioner here. I was on the county board for 30 years. Well, no, there was no way that you could fight it. If they took the bridge out, well, when the water come up, why, that bridge would be way too short and too low anyway. So number 8 was flooded. Out past Packeno's place there, that was low ground. The chimney in Elbowwood's office, I don't know, was it the schools or there was a chimney sitting there after the water started coming up, That stood there for quite a while. I know we'd be out with the boats, and of course the water was down yet, but you could see that chimney. We didn't have a very big boat. We just stayed pretty much close to shore fishing. That's about the size of it. And some of the coulees where the bays were starting to form. So, yeah.
On the first 3 days of October 1955, dedication ceremonies were held. Plaques from the first forebears bridge at Elbow Woods naming the chiefs of the Mandan, the Arikara, and Hidatsa tribes were incorporated into the new bridge near Newtown.
A lot of the buildings were moved, and you saw the people having to move, and you had to find where you're going to stay. And the hardest part for me, I think, is remembering when they moved to graves. That was kind of you wondered if you got the right grave moved, And you hear horror stories about how everything just fell to pieces in the graves, and they just kind of gathered the bones and put them here, and that's supposed to be your relative's grave. So I often wondered if that was so, I actually did not see them tearing down the bridges. I know they did, but when they were setting up the new bridge, my mother, she was the one that raised us. I was not born, but I was without a dad, and I was raised by my grandparents and her, So in the winter, well, she tried to find a place in town, and she moved to Sanish, the old Sanish, and then she moved into Newtown, and we moved up to the new Sanish, and we done a lot of moving. And then when they started building this bridge, well, we lived up on the new Sanish, and I had a cousin there. She lived up there too, and we used to sit on a hill and watch, watch this bridge being built, and it was an awesome thing for us. We're even now to this new one here that's coming up. We go by it, and we're driving over on this Forebears Bridge, and we're saying, awesome, look at that new bridge coming up, and how can the engineers build something like that? And then you turn around and I do, and we feel sad that the old bridge is going to be destroyed and taken apart.
And my grandma lived alone, and she was very against it. Different ladies stood up and cried, actually cried. They didn't want this to happen. And that's how I heard about the dam and the bridge been built. And on the other hand, my mother, Ethel Fastdog, and my dad, George, they were kind of for it. They were kind of happy that the dam was coming, and George felt rather than going all the way to Elbow Woods Bridge and going to Independence, he was glad because here he could just come to Sanish and go back to Mandaree, and he was happy about it, and so was my mother, because they had land in Mandaree. They had cattle and horses.
Yeah, when I was going to school in the Elbow Woods there, when I was a freshman, the water was starting to come up already, and every day they'd measure, and it was amazing how fast it came up. Oh yeah, it was like I said, wow, look at all that water, and at that time, like young people, we didn't really, really didn't know what was really going on, I just know that, like she says, the elderly people were pretty much, devastated by it. Back in 1955, October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, they had the dedication of the bridge. Well, after the flooding of Elbow Woods and the surrounding villages, the Fort Berthold Indians didn't want the water to come up and cover their chosen lands. For a long time, they opposed the project and complained against the forced surrounding of their heritage. But the surrender was inevitable, so they accepted the $12,500,000 settlement from the government. But the bridge, nobody opposed the bridge when circumstances made it necessity. The bridge was vital to them, as it is to the rest of the people of the state of North Dakota. Legislature at some of the proper Prompton voted to name the biggest bridge in the state after Chief Forebears. Forebears was a Hidatsa chief who settled his people at like a Bishop village. He was in a water buster clan. So it was up to the present day water busters to assume jurisdiction when Forebears was to be honored with full approval from the tribal council, having supervision over the 3 tribes. The water busters were given responsibility of going ahead with the program. In particular, the responsibility for making all arrangements fell upon the shoulders of a group of clan members, and these included Frank Chase, Percy Rush, Mark Necklace, Grace Medicine Crow. They started a committee. A committee was in charge, and they picked Frank Chase as the chairman. The called meetings, appointed committees, enlisted the help of the fellow clansmen, and the ladies involved were Mrs. Phoebe Smith, Ethel Fastdog, Cora Snow, Emma Fredericks, Grace Medicine Crow. After they had many meetings and got things organized, the committee chose 3 young waterbuster ladies to take part in a bridge celebration. They were as follows. Wilma Nash was a waterbuster lady. She had the honors of cutting the ribbon of the bridge. Rosalind Birdbear, she was also of the waterbuster clan, and she done the unveiling of the Forebears Monument, where they relocated upon New Sanish. And then there was me, Laverne Drags of Fettick. I christened the bridge. I was about 17 years old or 16 years old at the time. The girls were about the same age. After we were chosen, my mother and grandfather, Medicine Crow, started to plan what I would wear for the occasion. And my grandfather ordered a nice buckskin dress for me, and he had also the headdress, the war bonnet, and plans to give away for the powwow. Usually when you're honored, you know, you always do a little giveaway, and so they collected things like material things to give away at that time, at the powwow celebration on that day. They had a 3-day celebration planned. That was October 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And it was real nice fall days at that time. We rode in a convertible from the parade from Newtown to the bridge, and there was high school band there, and North Dakota governor at the time was Bronsdale. Army engineers were there, Corps of Engineers, several reverends to give the invocations, and they were Reverend Robert Fox, he's a member of the Arikara tribe, and Reverend Harold Case, and Father Reinhardt. Most of all these people are deceased now.
We started out first, and the people followed was the governor of North Dakota, Norman Bronsdale, Honorary Thomas, B.U.R. T. Burke, Justice of the Supreme Court, North Dakota Supreme Court, and Al Burdick, Army Engineer, Al Hurd, Civet Thompson, State Highway Commissioner, Father Reinhardt, Reverend H.W. Case, Reverend Thomas Chambers, Davis Bedell, Reverend Robert Fox, Frank Chase, President of Waterbuster Clan, Newtown High School, and Wofford City High School, and Enemy Women's Society. They all followed us to the bridge, and we were in a convertible, but they walked to the bridge, the east side, where we did the ceremonies. I cut the ribbon, scissors. They gave us I kept it. Oh. My mother has it, and her house got burnt down, so it's lost. And most of the pictures of that day, a lot of excitement, and taking my picture, and you know, it was very, very happy.
Special people in there.
Oh, I was honored. My family was honored, and I felt really special to be chosen. So I was very happy. And I wore a buckskin dress, my regalia, my headdress, and we gave away. They gave away my dress. I told my children I was chosen for the bridge and to cut the ribbon, and they're all happy for me.
Oh yeah, I showed them the news article that I have, you know, that I kept about them days, and all the people that was that was involved in it, the ladies and the men, and my grandfather, Medicine Crow, even got in on a picture, and keep it for a souvenir, although it's kind of falling apart, but I cherish it, you know, and I showed him, look at your grandma did this, or your mom did this, and then years ago too, like our Native Americans and stuff, we didn't have the luxuries of having cameras, you know, to where we'd be taking pictures. If we did, we didn't, it was hard for us to get a film. So it's not like nowadays, you know, run to the store and get a throwaway or what do you call that? We didn't have that. So I think that's the reason why we didn't have very many pictures taken.